Hello, friends, and welcome to this edition of Coming In for a Landing. I am your host, Paul Hudrick, and I am joined by yet again another very special co-host, a very good friend of mine, the host of Sixers Pre and Postgame Live, and that is Amy Fadool. Amy, it is so good to see you.
It is so good to be seen by you, my friend Paulie. It's great to be on your podcast. I am a loyal listener. I'm excited that I get finally my turn after Danny.
Listen, come on.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know, and I appreciate you so much and that's all the people at NBC Sports that I have gotten to know over the years. Everyone has been so awesome and gracious about wanting to come on, asking me if they can come on. So that's very cool to have those kind of connections of people that were coworkers are now friends. It's awesome, and I am greatly appreciative for you coming on. What to start with? I mean, what else can we start with? The Sixers' huge win last night, 107-106 over the Lakers. Dramatic fashion, maybe shouldn't have been dramatic. Fashion after holding a 16-point lead, double digits there. In the end, the Lakers go on a run, actually take the lead, and Tobias Harris bails them out with a very clutch shot. So I want to start, Amy, just your biggest takeaways. Some people are going to call it a measuring stick, a barometer, whatever you want to look at it for the Sixers. What was your biggest takeaway from the night?
I mean, obviously, games like this are a measuring stick, whether the team likes to say it or not. I asked Jim Lynam that the other day, and he was like, of course, I'm not going to do my Jim Lynam, but he was basically, Aim, they're going to say that, but it's not because it's too early in the season. But the point is to be made that, like years past, we all remember the Bucks game last year, Christmas. Oh, this is it. Look at this team. Clippers game later on that season. Those were measuring stick games. You need to see how you stack up against the best. But to me, my biggest takeaway is it's been what it's been a couple of times this year. Those are games that the Sixers would not have won last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They just wouldn't have won it. They could have been up by 30, and I would have told you any day of the week if this was last year's team, nope, they're not winning this game. You didn't feel good at any lead. It didn't matter how great it was, just because they couldn't close things out. And that doubt crept back up when the Lakers went on a 13-0 run, and you're thinking, here it is, just like we called it, we knew it. But they didn't. They stemmed the tide, and really for the most part of that game, save that last little bit, they answered the call every time pushed by the Lakers. And we've seen them do that this year. The Raptors have done it. Even lesser teams like the Pistons have constantly pushed them, and the Sixers have answered. I think that's a huge question mark that has been somewhat answered, at least early on. As you mentioned, we're looking at 15 games, so it's not a huge sample size, but when the season's at 72, the quarter poll is a fair assessment, and we are at the quarter poll when you think about it in terms of the regular season. So my biggest takeaway is that maybe they can finish games out. We've been looking for a closer on this team. I'm not saying Tobias Harris is it, but I'm saying it was awesome that Tobias Harris felt that confidence to do that. He is a completely different player, whether it's be playing the four, playing under Doc Rivers, both, but being able to close that game out and not panic the way the entire fan base was panicking at home was huge.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, because you're right. I agree with you. They, like last year even, or a couple of years ago, they lose this game. They don't find that, they don't dig down and dig down and find a way to eke that thing out. And I think you make another excellent point when you talk about the fact that, listen, they're the Lakers. They weren't going away. Yeah. They were going to keep pushing you. They were going to keep coming at you. And the fact that every time they did, they fought it off. I think that is a huge sign of growth. That's a championship team over there. It's a real, and you could argue they're improved upon their at least offensively. They are improved from that championship team. So to do that, they hadn't lost a road game this season. So all of that, the context of it, I think, that's where, Coach Lynam says, I think he's right that, because Doc Rivers sure as hell played it down. No, it's not a measuring stick. No. But then he went ahead and shortened the hell out of his rotation, played Tobias, Joel, and Ben Simmons like 40 minutes each. But just another game. Sure.
Yeah, just another game on our schedule. No big deal.
But Tobias, I thought it was good that Tobias admitted it. Tobias is like, nah, like people have said we haven't beaten anybody, and we wanted to beat this team. So I was like, cool, good for you, Tobias. He was guns blazing last night. I guess for obvious reasons, he was just feeling good about himself. And that's what I want to transition a little bit into that with Tobias. Like my biggest takeaway, like I'm thinking about it. You look at the Lakers, obviously, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, they lead the way. And then my thing is, like, who is their third best player, right? You look at the Sixers, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, very clearly their third best player. And I thought that was kind of, listen, they won by 1 point, but I thought that was kind of the difference throughout the game, is that the Sixers had three different players. Extra. Right. They have three all-star level players all playing at an all-star level on the same night. Whereas the Lakers, it was LeBron, it was AD, and really the supporting cast was really quiet. So just for your, when you're looking at this team, can Tobias Harris, can he, the way he's playing right now, if he keeps it up, can he make that difference? Can he be like that third star that maybe catapults them above some other teams?
One of my favorite tweets last night was a guy he's the opposite of our Brian Brennan, who's our Sixers producer from Boston. This guy's from Philly and he produces up in Boston. So he had a tweet out, which is great. Max Letterman had this, not that Max Letterman, a different one, spells it a little bit differently, but he had a tweet out that says, "What an appropriately paid player," about Tobias. Because the big knock on Tobias has been, oh, he's overpaid. Oh, he's not a max player. Oh, this is ridiculous. Look at this guy. He's not living up to the contract, blah, 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 blah. What an appropriately paid player last night. He absolutely did everything that he was supposed to do. And maybe it's part of it, his coming out type of thing this season, is that he's finding his way more as that third fiddle, for lack of a better expression. It's hard. Listen, he knows that he is not the guy. He's not even the other guy. He's the other guy. And sometimes that might be a little hard. I think him playing the natural four is so much better. You and I saw that last year. I mean, it was just frustrating to watch him try to guard the threes. And the three is just not his role. It's just not a good fit for him. He needs to be the four. And we saw that. I think obviously there's a comfortability with Doc Rivers as well. But I think Tobias is who we thought he was. You know what I mean? Like, you thought he was going to be this guy. He showed you a little bit that he wasn't, and now he's back to being that guy. I think having that third level player is key, because listen, you mentioned it. LeBron James is LeBron James. What he's been doing to me is once again proving why he's always going to be in the MVP conversation.
Amy, him and I are the same age.
Exactly.
LeBron James and I are the same age. And look at what LeBron James is doing. It makes no sense.
I had trouble, sometimes when I get off the floor, I'm like, ooh, that was down a very comfortable position to get off the floor in. And I know last year there was so much talk about, and Tom Haberstroh was like, well, you shouldn't factor age into MVP, which I'm like, yes, you should absolutely factor age into MVP, because what he does and the mileage that guy has, he is everything for them. And rightfully so. He's their finals MVP. He gets them to the championship. He's the best player in the world. There's no question right now in the league. He's my MVP. But if you don't have LeBron James, you need a bunch of guys that are just really, really good. And last night, AD looked just okay comparatively. Yeah. Meanwhile, Tobias looked awesome. And so if you have a Joel Embiid who's playing at an MVP level, Ben Simmons gives you so many intangibles and tangibles. I'm not talking about his shot, and I understand that's what everybody dislikes. But his rebounding, his assists, I mean, the guy just does so much for you that you just can't see in the stat sheet, that you have to watch the game for. But to have Tobias play at an all-star level, to have three all-star players, that is what makes a championship caliber team. That's when you look at teams like the Warriors, the Lakers in the years past. And you mentioned who's their third best player. They don't really have one. I would say maybe collectively between Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell. I mean, I can't put Kuzma in that conversation because he's so sporadic. Caruso is like a fun flash in the pan type of thing. He show you ooh, that's fun. And then you don't see him for 30 more minutes. And then beyond that, I mean, you're looking at real definition role players, and it works for the Lakers, and it's fine because they have legit one of the best players to ever play the game, in my opinion. And I know people will freak out. I have him above Jordan, and Paul knows that. So Paul's not going to give me grief about that.
No,
but I have him above Jordan because the things that he does to me are just mind boggling. And granted, I didn't watch Jordan, as much as I watched LeBron. I did see Jordan play. I'm not, 12 years old, but to me, LeBron is the best. But unless you have LeBron, you need to have three all-star players and a superstar. And that's what the Sixers have. And Tobias Harris is showing that he can be the third guy. And the third guy is a really, really important part of being that championship level DNA. You have to have that guy. And that guy can't just show up one or two games. Tobias Harris has had maybe one or two off games, really just the opener to come to mind where he's 3 for 13 as far as shooting. the max guys of when you're thinking, wow, this is an all-star, they're shooting 50% from the field, they're shooting 40% from three-point line, and they're shooting 90% from the free throw. Guess where Tobias's numbers are? They're right around 50, 40, 90. And when you have a guy that's able to do that, that shows you that one, he can be counted on late in the game, and two, that he's consistent. I think that's the biggest thing for Tobias. We saw that last year, 27, in the next game, 4. You're thinking, wow, that was you can't have that kind of drop off. You know what I mean? If you're only going to give me 18, give me 18, 18, 18, 18. Don't give me 27 and 4. So
Right.
I think that for me, seeing Tobias do what he did on such a big stage was awesome, because all-star voting opened, and I hope that he gets a chance, because there's times where he should have made it probably in years past and he didn't. And I think this year he's playing at such a consistently high level. To me, it's all about the consistency, because he's been this guy the whole season, save one game, really, that opener, in my opinion.
No, agreed. I just on the whole GOAT conversation, from now on, I actually abstain from those. I cop out and I say it's generational. That's
All
just the way
right,
I see it. Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, you could argue that generation. Then there was Kareem, then you could argue Bird, Magic, then it was Jordan. Now it's LeBron. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's that simple. Like those,
Yeah.
it's generational. It's impossible to compare them because of the
It is
eras and
that.
because
It's
of
apples
all
and
that.
oranges.
It is impossible. And I know that's not going to stop anybody from debating it, but that's the
Nope.
way I feel about it. So Michael Jordan was the greatest player I saw growing up. LeBron James has been the greatest player I've watched over the last, whatever, almost 20 years now. So
Yeah,
that's the way I see it. But to get back to Tobias, it was he was, and like we were, like, all anyone who covers the Sixers, watches the Sixers, fans of the Sixers, he was chasing that Clippers version of him, and he hadn't found it. Quite frankly, he just hadn't. And I think, not only is he there right now, because he's playing at that level, especially when you look at the efficiency. You mentioned the ones that I saw, and I might be messing it up a little bit, so forgive me, but there's only 3 players in the NBA right now that are plus 20 points a game, 50% from the field, and 45% from 3. It's Paul George, it's Colin Sexton, it's Tobias Harris.
Oh, Colin
Pretty
Sexton.
impressive.
That guy's great.
Colin Sexton is so fun to watch. I absolutely love him. But yeah, like that's where he is right now. Like, he's playing, he's been among the better players in the NBA right now. And I thought Doc Rivers said something really interesting too, because it was the other day, I can't remember which presser he said it at, but he was asked about Tobias, and he said, not only do I think this looks like the Clippers version, I think it's better, because he didn't play defense like he is now. He didn't play like that in LA. And now you see, like, that one possession, like, listen, if he has to guard Anthony Davis all game long, Anthony Davis would eventually get his. But that one possession, man, I was like, again, like, we look just, not even just the City, you look at just Tobias last year, 2 years ago. Does he defend Anthony Davis like that on that play? No, he really doesn't. He has come such a long, and listen, and I get it with, he makes a lot of money. People were upset because, whatever, he wasn't performing to that max contract. I get it. But you can't deny that this dude works, and he works really hard. He was not a 3-point shooter when he came into the league, developed that part of his game, was not a very good defensive player, hadn't been up until he got to the Sixers. Now he's becoming, listen, he's not going to make any all NBA defensive teams, but he's
not a liability.
Not a liability, and he's versatile. I mean, like you alluded to earlier, you don't want him guarding wings, like, quicker wings all game long. You don't want that. But if he gets switched on the one, he can handle it. And he can stand, like, it's not the worst thing in the world if he has to switch with Ben Simmons and he's on, he's on a LeBron James for a possession. It's not the end of the world. You don't think, it's not like when you get switched on the Furkan Korkmaz and you're like, okay, cool, 2 points, and you're going the other way.
That was hard to watch.
Yes, it was very hard to watch. I was like, someone's got it. Like, can someone help, please? Like, what are we doing here?
Anyone.
But yeah, and speaking of defense, you touched a little bit on Ben, and just kind of, it's been funny because everyone was freaking out early in the season. Doc Rivers all along was like, he's been good. Like, everyone relax.
We're good.
He's not scoring points, but he's been very good at literally everything else. And my biggest concern with him was the turnovers. When you looked at when he came back from the knee, the 2 games against Miami and then the game against Memphis, I think he had 6 turnovers.
6 or 7, yeah.
And just brutal. And the one turnover I have not seen, and I've said this a few times, I have not seen the old pick up the dribble, turn around blindly, and pass it to nobody. I have not seen that since the halftime of that Memphis game. So I think, and I know Doc Rivers, I asked him the question about that last night, and he jokingly said Sam Cassell is the turnover whisperer, and said that he had one turnover last night, Ben Simmons, and Doc Rivers said that Sam Cassell flipped out when he did it. So that's where we are. So I guess with Ben Simmons, a couple things. Do you like, does the recent aggressiveness, does that give you hope that maybe he can, he's starting to figure out his role offensively with the new pieces in the system? And then also, how big do you think it is, with all due respect to Brett Brown and the staff he had, how big is it for Ben to have a guy like Sam Cassell, who was such a good player and did so many little things and was so smart and so crafty, and a guy like that Ben can kind of relate to? How big do you think it is for him to have that kind of guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Ben, we're seeing the evolution of him, and we have to remind ourselves sometimes that these guys are so young in life and young in the game. I mean, we were talking about LeBron James. That man has been around a really long time, and he's just 36. That's a young age, but he has been around.
Thank you for saying
Joel
36
Embiid,
is a young age.
it is. Listen, we had all week the Eagles saying how young Nick Sirianni is at 39. Sure. I'm like, well, I hope so. Let's keep that going. How young is young? Is anything under 50 young? I just want to know. How much ceiling do I have to go? But Joel Embiid's 26, Ben Simmons is 24. These guys are so young. And we were seeing their relationship evolve and progress and really turn into something special. And that, to me, has directly translated to a comfortability between the two of them on the court and with Ben Simmons on the court. Ben probably, and I know you saw this too, felt like he had to do a lot sometimes, like all of it. When you are the best player on your team, certainly sometimes the best player on the court, if Joel Embiid's not there, you're like, I got to do it all. Who am I going to pass it to? That guy I don't trust. That guy I don't trust. He doesn't know the offense. He's not going to make the shot. So maybe there was times where he felt like he did too much. And then he gets this new system, and now he's thinking, well, maybe I don't have to do as much. I kind of think of like the line in the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Well now you can't just lay there. You got to do something. Now you're just boogie boarding. So it's like, maybe he just backed off too much, because there was games where he would shoot like 2 times. I'm thinking, I would strangle you if you came over to my sideline and I was your coach and you're Ben Simmons and you shot the ball twice. I'd strangle you. You would fall over and we'd have to resuscitate you, because that would be the most infuriating thing in the world. Doc Rivers luckily has a lot more patience than I do, and is why he's a lot more successful as a coach. But I think you're seeing Ben Simmons, the fourth quarter against the Celtics. Boom. What? He shot the ball how many times? Okay. Next game. Boom. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He went to the line 10 for 12 from the free throw line. When's the last time you saw that guy shoot 12 free throws in a game? It's years, it feels like. Then this game again, 7, 8, 9, 10 shots. Doc Rivers was saying exactly what he said about Tobias in the opener when everybody was all panicking. He says, hey, gonna be fine. We're panicking. He doesn't know Negadelphia like we know Negadelphia. We panic. Push that panic button. And I was right there with him. I'm thinking, Ben Simmons has regressed. This is awful. He's gone backwards. How has he gone backwards? This is terrible. This guy's an all-star and he's going backwards. But apparently he was just feeling his way out. And I have to say that not that he ever heard me in the newsroom where I was saying, shoot the ball, shoot it. I apologize. I was wrong. You clearly had to work out some things. And I hope that this is the start of the trajectory. I think that fourth quarter against the Celtics was the start of it. We've seen it now for 2 whole games, this aggressive Ben. I like that he always gets his teammates involved. I just didn't like that it was at the cost of his own offense. And it seemed like the first dozen games, that was the case. He was passing so much, he was turning the ball over, and he was worrying about everybody else. At some point, you got to eat. And Ben Simmons, whether it was Sam Cassell or Doc Rivers or both, said, you also need to eat, my friend. So pass the ball when it's smart, make smart passes, but also make sure you look for yourself. And I think we're seeing that a little bit. I don't want to get too excited, because I've put my eggs in the Ben Simmons cart. It's burned me before to the tune of the Raptors postseason, where I was so high on him and everybody's like, Amy, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, everybody. And then, of course, we didn't get to see him in the postseason last year, which is 100% the reason that they got bounced in 4 games by the Celtics, because, it just wasn't enough. But I hope that, seeing Sam Cassell as a very heady, sound, solid player. Sam Cassell didn't turn the ball over because Sam Cassell didn't do dumb things on the court. He didn't try to do too much, and he did just enough to make the winning play. And I think that when I say just enough, I think that sounds like a negative, but it's not. You don't want to do too much. You don't want to do too little. You want to do the exact amount. And Sam Cassell was a solid player for many, many years. And I think having that guy and knowing his history, I'm not going to pretend to think that Ben Simmons was watching Sam Cassell all that much growing up, but he probably is aware of him, and maybe he's put on some YouTube clips. I'm not sure, but he knows that the guy is sound. He's probably seen him play, and he's probably seen him at practice and says, you know what, this guy knows what he's talking about. So I think that having Sam is a direct relationship to why we're seeing Ben not only turn the ball over less, but be an aggressive offensive player for himself. He's always aggressive. He's always looking for like that extra pass and that to make the play. He's just not always looking for it himself, which infuriates people because this is AAU ball here. Come on, put up your shot. Get your numbers. What are we doing? If you're not shooting, what's the point? We don't understand it as a society. You're supposed to put the points on the board. Like, put them up for yourself. Selfish.
Yeah, and there is. I think there's just people who don't understand defense. I think there are some people that don't realize how good, and how, like, to the level of how, like, you could make a feasible argument that Ben Simmons is the best defensive player in the NBA, especially when you talk about versatility, being able to guard multiple positions. Like, he might be the best defensive player in the NBA. That's not crazy to say.
It's not.
And I get that sometimes the shooting, it infuriates people. And I get it. I totally get it. Because sometimes I watch it, and like you said, Amy, it frustrates the hell out of me to watch it and cover it sometimes. But you have to watch the other end of the floor and see what he is doing, because it's masterful. He is 24 years old and he could win Defensive Player of the Year. That is insane. Like, that's an incredible task. And I think we talk about coaching. We talk about, I almost think there is a good cop, bad cop thing with Doc Rivers and Sam Cassell going on. And I think it's great for Ben. I think he kind of needs that. I think he needs Doc praising him in public and telling us we're all nuts when we say anything critical about him. He's like, nah, you're crazy. Like, we scored 120 points today. I don't care. But then Sam Cassell is going nuts when he turns the ball over once in a game. So I think that dynamic is helpful. And I think Doc is kind of got, like, he's good at this, like this idea of, I think this is like a boss thing, like a managerial technique. And it's, it's criticize privately, praise publicly. And I think that's what he's very good at. And I think that's part of what's made him such a great coach, is that's the way he's kind of, established his relationship with his players. I'm going to criticize you in private or amongst our team, but when it's in public, I'm going to defend the hell out of you. And that's exactly what he's done with Ben Simmons. And I think it's so far so good. It's worked very well. But great performances. Joel Embiid, obviously, we're a little worried about the back. We'll see how he kind of bounces back, how he's feeling today, how he feels going into tomorrow. Ben was great. Tobias was great. Those three were magnificent, and that's a big reason why they won the game. But I do have some concerns when it comes to the bench. And like we already touched on the fact that Doc's a liar, because he said he didn't put anything extra into this game, yet he shortened the hell out of his bench and played those other guys a ton. I think Shake was the only guy who played over 20 minutes off the bench. There were no all bench lineups, which he has done often this year. So, I thought Shake was fine. Like, he wasn't great. He was okay. I think he went up with I can't remember how many points, but he's like 4 of 9 from the field. He was fine.
Yeah. 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Furkan, he's fine. I mean, I don't care for his decision making. I don't care for his defense.
Oh, it's defense. At least you called it defense.
Yeah, I know. Whatever you want to whatever he was trying to do against LeBron James. So yeah, there's that. And then Dwight Howard, who I thought was having a really excellent start to the year. Of the last couple of games, I feel like he's getting exposed a little bit for maybe not being as mobile and maybe being a more old school kind of center. And then Maxey didn't get in the first half, only played the second half. So I guess, just for you watching, are you a little bit worried when you look at the bench unit? And if, in these bigger games against these better teams, is the bench good enough to you to compete?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bench, I feel like it's, what day is it? We've been talking about the bench for this team for a number of years, and it certainly has improved overall. They know what they've got. And we've seen Doc tinker with it. Matisse Thybulle comes in for defense late games, substitutes out whether it's Shake Milton sometimes or Tyrese Maxey or whomever, because he likes to go offense defense, especially Matisse Thybulle and Danny Green. He likes to switch those two a lot late. Thybulle's never going to get you 12 points a game against a really good team. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be able to block his shot. His only really trick in his bag is the three-pointer or coming up with a steal because he's so good defensively and then has an open lane right to the other side. But I think for me, shortening the bench, this is what happens in the playoffs, right? You don't have, Doc has said it. He's been asked it a couple times. I know you've been one of them. Like, what do you know? No, I'll have 12, 13. No, you won't. You will not have 12 or 13 guys out there in the playoffs. I love that you say that. And maybe right now you will have 12 or 13 guys. And you're going to be going to Isaiah Joe, who I think showed a lot of promise early on. I don't know what he would have done in a game like that because it's defending world champions who got better, who have the sixth man of the year on their team now instead of on the Clippers. And they have Dennis Schroeder on their team now. And they have the exact same team minus JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, which, okay. I mean, if we're really trading apples and oranges, Rondo, come on. Yeah, Rondo is a steady hand. That's about it.
He's not going to get you a bunch of points.
Yeah, he was. He's a steady hand. Listen, there is something to be said for having a steady hand point guard who has a championship caliber and championship pedigree, which is what Rondo has. He's got multiple titles. But the bench is worrisome because they don't have that steady hand. They don't have that veteran guy that can come in and kind of hold the ship. I love Maxey. There's no doubt. I mean, I don't have it behind me, but I have more Kentucky gear in the Delaware Valley right here in my home than anybody else ever.
I believe that, yeah.
It's rough. Unless Tyrese Maxey, unless like somebody they're like, the UK fan club that I don't know about. But I think that getting to see him rather in the second half was big because he's a cool customer like Shake Milton. Those guys rise to the level of the competition and they rise to the moment. And I know he's only 20, but we saw that with Shake Milton when he was, as a rookie. These guys, they're such cool customers that it doesn't bother them as much. I think that's helpful. But in the same time, you look at some of the guys out there and you're thinking like, who might look good in the Sixers uniform? We just saw him, Wayne Ellington. A steady hand, a guy that can get you points, that can come in, find his shot. What's wrong with having a Wayne Ellington? I mean, obviously there's the Philly native, but 33 years old. The guy's been around the league. He knows
actually prefer DeLon Wright. Speaking of guys that roasted him.
There you go. Talking about point guard. Obviously, Wayne's more of a two guard. DeLon Wright, we just saw him. I asked Jim Lynam that, and Jim always puts his GM hat on. Is like, game. I can't talk about. I'm like, you actually can. You're an analyst now. You can talk about specific players, but he's like, yeah, you probably do need a backup point, somebody to right the ship. So you have those. Those are two guys who just come just to the top of my mind. Detroit's obviously having a terrible season. They could be looking to go somewhere else. And maybe they're like, listen, let's ship me out of here. I would take DeLon Wright here in a heartbeat. I don't know that he was the 28-point scorer that we saw the other night,
of course
maybe.
Not. Yeah.
But he's still a steady hand.
Yes.
And Wayne Ellington maybe isn't the guy that's going to get you 20, but he can come in and get you 12. So I think that the bench, we're a little less than two months now from the trade deadline. I think that that's the number one thing because who's going to be improved. The Celtics have this giant trade exception that they have so much money that they can go out there and get whomever they want at trade deadline. Okay, so you have to worry about that and you have to be prepared for a counter move. The Nets have already made every trade possible, I think. I don't know that they can make another one, but I would never put it past them because Lord knows that team is just a monster waiting in the wings. I know they're still kind of working out the kinks, but in order to get past the Bucks, the Nets, I'm sure the Heat are going to turn it on at some point. They're just too good to be down this long. And whatever move the Celtics make, that's 4 teams in my mind that you have to really be prepared with a counter move. And your counter move is your bench. To me, you've got to bolster that bench. You have to have a good point guard to come off the bench and really steady the ship and get you some points. You talked about Rondo. Rondo, I mean, he's got a lot of miles on those wheels, but he is a prime example. He's a guy that can come in, get you, maybe he's not going to get you 10 or 12, but he's going to give you probably 10 or 12 assists. We all know that. And he's going to be a steady hand. He doesn't turn the ball over. Having a two guard that can come off the bench and really create a shot maybe is less of a need with Tyrese Maxey, but I think you can't depend on just Maxey. Furkan Korkmaz is my 8th or 9th guy right now. I would not have him because he's such a liability on the defensive end. And with these games going as quick as they do, you don't always have time to bring him out of the game. And next thing you know, you're watching him guard LeBron James, which is just, I mean, my eyeballs hurt after that. It was awful. It looked like me trying to guard LeBron James. And I am a terrible defender.
Yeah,
Terrible. It was awful. But yeah, the bench it's a big concern. I mean, Doc's not going to say it, but it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's two names that I've kind of been circling and guys that I really like. One is, of course, PJ Tucker, I think would be a tremendous fit as a backup four, and also maybe play, if you get in a situation where maybe you play a team like the Lakers and Montrezl Harrell is playing the 5, PJ Tucker can go up against Harrell at the 5. And that would be a hell of a matchup. It'd be a lot of fun. All energy, man. That'd be great. So Tucker would be a guy I would be all over, and I am sure that Daryl Morey is. But that position that you're talking about, I agree that, listen, I love Shake Milton and I love Tyrese Maxey. I think they're both going to be very good guards for a very long time, but they're both young and they don't have that experience. They don't have that steady influence. And like maybe Shake Milton, if you put him with a guy who has that steady influence, maybe that makes him better. The guy I've had circled and the Sixers sniffed around him last offseason, Patty Mills would be and he's having a monster year. He would be such a phenomenal fit because he can play that backup point guard role off the bench. You can maybe even insert him in the starting lineup and have him kind of, play with Ben Simmons. Like there are so many ways you could use him. You could use him off the ball. You could use him on the ball. He's won a championship. He's steady. I mean, plays solid defense. So he would be the guy for me I would have at the top of that list. But there are guys out there that, and right now there's still, we still have 2 months till the trade deadline. So teams, some teams are going to go in one direction. Some teams are going to go in another. And that's, some guys will shake loose in that regard. You're going to have the buyout market. Don't forget that the Sixers still have their taxpayer MLE, so they can maybe lure a buyout guy here, pay him a little bit more money than another team perhaps. So there are ways I think that they can improve that bench. I think they need to. Again, I'm worried about Dwight Howard a little bit. I'm worried about the fact that, he can't stretch the floor. I'm worried about the fact that he commits a ton of fouls. Last night, he committed 4 fouls in 7 minutes last night. And that's just,
he walks onto the court and he gets a foul.
It's bad.
He has never gotten a call stop talking to the rest. They're not going to you haven't gotten a call in 20 years. You're not going to get one tonight.
No. And he got some in his prime, but now it's not going to happen.
It's with Orlando.
No, exactly. Like backup Dwight Howard is not going to get those calls nowadays. And and that's not like, and I don't want to kill Dwight Howard because I think for the most part he's been more good than he's been bad this year. And I like it. I love his activities, the offensive rebounds. I love that he brings that toughness element that I think they need a little bit of. He brings a little bit of that nastiness. I think they kind of need some of that. So I don't want to completely kill Dwight Howard, but I think having another option that you could play at the 5 would be big for the bench. I feel bad that we were like completely blown over Mike Scott, but it's been so hard because he's been hurt and he has not played. But he's a guy that if he gets back into form, when you go small, we've seen him play the 5. Obviously, he can create a shot. He's a good 3-point shooter. He has that toughness, but it's like, I don't even count him on the bench because he doesn't play. He's always in street clothes, which is a shame because he's a good bench player for this team, or can be. Yeah, it's a shame what happened to him too, because he had the injury to his one knee. He probably got and it's not anyone's fault, but he probably got overextended because they were so short of players, and then he winds up hurting his other knee. So I mean, it's a shame that the way that went down. And again, it's no one's fault. It's COVID's fault. Like it sucks. So I think that's a big part of why he was up. But not having him as the backup 4 too, that is causing Doc to overextend Tobias and Ben a little bit because they have to play the 4.
What about Kevin Love? That's a popular name right now.
Yeah, the money. I don't know how you can make the money work. I guess
LeBron will find a way to get his buddy out to LA.
Maybe that would be actually a pretty interesting fit. Although I guess then you'd have to play AD at the 5, and that probably wouldn't be ideal.
No, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, but no, I mean, listen, there are guys out. Again, there are players that are out there that will be out there that are going to make a lot of sense. I'm sure Daryl Morey is going to be on the phone an awful lot. I'm sure he's already on the phone an awful lot, looking for ways to improve this team. So, I'm not worried that I believe they will do something to improve this.
They won't
bench.
stand pat.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to go too hyperbole here and like, it's one win against a very good
It
team.
was an awesome win.
But there's a lot of people that are already, oh, here we go, an NBA Finals preview. I'm like, all right, maybe, but let's all kind of exhale a little bit.
It
But
was fun.
right now, where do you? Because I mean, going into the season, I would imagine you were similar to me. You probably thought, all right, 4 seed, maybe win the first round. It's very early, but have you allowed your brain to think maybe they can be better than that? Maybe they can be a 1 seed. Maybe they can, get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Have you allowed your brain to get there yet, or are you still, let's pump the brakes, let's relax, let's see a little bit more of this team and how it plays out?
I'm such a fan of hyperbole. I always take it to the extra level. I had them as like a 3. I thought, listen, they've made a lot of improvements. They were, if they had continued on their trajectory, they could have possibly been a 3 last year, but then of course the wheels fell off and everything kind of just. But I thought maybe they could be a 3. Maybe they could get home court. That could happen. And it was funny. I came home a couple of nights ago, and I was like, "Is this team real?" I asked Sean. I was like, "Is this happening? Should I get excited?" My mom calls me the next day. My mom is not an NBA fan. She's a college basketball fan. She watches the Sixers because she thinks as long as they're doing good, then I'm going to be doing good. I told her I don't work for the Sixers. She knows that. But to her point, it does make the post-game shows a lot easier when they're winning.
It's a mom thing, I think, because my mom's the same way.
It is. They want us
I'm
to
like,
do
I
well.
don't work for the Sixers. You know that, right?
They want us to do well. But she's like, that was so exciting. We watched it start to finish. So they've watched like every Sixers game now. They get the NBA League Pass, for Pete's sake, because they don't live here. But it was last week that I was like, I think that I could see them in the finals. I could see this team, not in the Eastern Conference Finals. I could see them in the NBA Finals. And I said it out loud. And as soon as I said it, I almost like hit myself. And I was like, okay, slow your roll, Fadool. I do think that they are a finals caliber team, though. I think we saw that. Now, if they go to, it's the Lakers, I watched that game. Do the Lakers win in 7? Probably. Because at the end of the day, to me, LeBron James is LeBron James, and he is the best player I've ever seen, and he will always step up. I hate when people say that he's not clutch. I think it's like when people say like Joel Embiid can't play back-to-back games. Joel Embiid can play back-to-back games. The point is sometimes, why would you? If you don't have to, why would you? Kevin Durant played 50 minutes in their double overtime game last week. Do you think he played the next game? No. Why? Because he didn't need to.
Yeah.
He didn't need to.
Right.
LeBron James doesn't play every game. Why? Because he doesn't need to. So I get it. Joel Embiid's 26. He should play more games, but let's just let that go. I think that this is a finals caliber team. I think they can get there. And I feel weird saying it because it sounds so strange about our team, our hometown team, thinking they could do it. It's like when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. It wasn't until that NFC title game that you really thought, if everyone's honest with themselves, that you really let yourself believe they could actually win the Super Bowl. They could actually do it. And it wasn't until the Phillies beat the Dodgers in LA that you thought they could win this thing. It wasn't getting to the playoffs. It wasn't being a 1 seed. It was when you beat that team that you thought that was actually a really good team, and we soundly beat them. This is the start of it. I think they could do what the Bucks did last year, and I think the Bucks obviously have been much maligned because of their postseason inability to get any kind of momentum going. But I think the Sixers have that ability. They can turn it on, and I see them as a finals caliber team, and I mean NBA finals. I think they could win the Eastern Conference. I really do. I don't see anybody in a 7-game series aside from the Nets that can challenge them. I mean, I think they're better than the Bucks, in my opinion.
You heard it here first. Amy Fadool says the Sixers guaranteed making the NBA.
So much grief.
You heard it here first. No, I tend to agree with you that I'm allowing myself to think that they are better than what I thought they were going to be. Because look, everything so far has been pretty damn close to the best case scenario.
Right.
Joel Embiid is playing at an MVP level. Tobias Harris looks like the Clippers version, maybe even slightly better. Ben Simmons has been Ben Simmons, and I think lately he's been even better because he's been more aggressive, and you're starting to see him feel more comfortable. Up until these last couple of games, Seth Curry was playing out of his mind. Yeah, and Danny, I thought, like, we haven't even touched on Danny Green. Danny Green, to me, that was his best game as a Sixer. He was excellent on both ends. Schroeder really wasn't a factor. He had a little burst in the third quarter, but Danny Green pretty much shut him down. It was a really impressive, and then also hit a few big shots. So I was really a big fan of Danny Green's game last night. So it's just all these things are really going their way. Doc Rivers is pushing all the right buttons so far. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a team to me that I am so intrigued. I can't wait for them to play the Nets. I can't wait for them to play the Bucks because I want to see
Celtics
how
with
they
Tatum.
Look. What's that? Yeah, Celtics with Tatum. Yeah, absolutely. I want to see how and the Heat with Jimmy and Bam. I want to see how they look when they're playing those kind of teams. I'm really intrigued by those matchups, and I think that's awesome that also our brains are going there, right? Because I think last year we were like, even when they beat the Bucks and then they go out and lose to the Magic, and we were all kind of skeptical. I think all season long we were kind of skeptical. Whereas this year, I think they're giving us reasons to believe, okay, maybe they are legit. Maybe they are different. A legit basketball team. So it's been an exciting start. And this, last night was the apex of it. Now we won't talk about the fact that, a couple of nights ago they lost to the worst team in the NBA. We won't even go there.
It's a goofy game. It's a goofy game.
It was a weird game. And those games are going to happen. And I think that's what people have to 72 game season this year. Weird games are going to happen. There are going to be games where, they were obviously up for that game last night. They weren't up for that game Monday. Quite frankly, they just weren't. Maybe they were looking ahead. I don't know. But lots of exciting stuff. I want to thank you so much for coming on, Amy. And listen, I want to just especially thank you because obviously, what happened to me and what's happened to a lot of people, unfortunately, with NBC Sports. And I texted you the news, and I think you called me about 7 seconds later, just to offer some kind words, and I really appreciated it. And obviously, Sean, same, texted me, very nice, very kind text, and you guys are awesome. For those of you who don't know Amy Fadool personally, she is a real one, as they say. She is a great person, and as is her husband Sean. Great people, great family, and I can't thank you enough for coming on here and joining me and doing this. And I really hope you come on again.
Anytime. That, Paulie, we go back a long time, even when you were just the guy, an intern, just hanging out. We didn't even know what to do, but we knew that you liked Sour Patch Kids, and I thought, well, then we're going to be best friends because Sour Patch Kids over Swedish Fish all day and twice on Sundays. So we all know that. If you have an issue with that, you can @ Amy Fadool NBCS, and I will bring my Sour Patch A game to the table, as Tom Doherty can tell you. But Paulie, of course, I think the world of you always have. I know that you are such a great worker and really knowledgeable, and I'm so glad that I get to at least hear your voice on the Zooms every day with Doc and all the players. One day soon, we will all be together in person at a practice, and we'll have to go get some beers afterwards because I miss that greatly. But I wish you all the best, and I'm literally, where I am. I'm only a phone call away, so anytime you can have me on, I'm a big fan of the podcast, so I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate you so much, Amy, and I appreciate everyone for checking out the Coming In for a Landing podcast. Subscribe, rate, download, all that fun stuff. I have another unbelievable guest in the works next week. I'm very excited about that. Again, please rate, subscribe, download the Coming In for a Landing podcast. I'm your host, Paul Hudrick, and I will talk to you guys next time.